Dr. Rebecca Good has her finger on the pulse. She has been a guest lecturer. She has authored many articles for education journals, and she's the host of her own podcast, The Dr. B. Good Show. Dr. Good, welcome to KDKA Radio in Pittsburgh. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So I guess we'll start with maybe the easiest question for me to ask, and one of the harder ones I would surmise for you to answer is, what are teachers, amidst this pandemic, going to be facing once school reopens?
That's a really good question, and hashtag Teachers of the Year. I think they need to get the Time Magazine award for doing what they've done. We asked teachers March 13th or 14th to many times put aside their spring break in different parts of the country and prepare to build a plane and fly it at the same time, to be able to get work to students, first packets and then devices if districts were able to get devices out to their students, and give them an engaging virtual distance learning experience so that they didn't lose as much academic loss as they would otherwise. And so what we asked our teachers to do while they were coping with kids at home, many times them having to be teachers at home while being teachers of their own students, worrying about COVID and getting COVID, their family getting COVID, and, getting a good curriculum done for their students. That was a lot of worry, a lot of pressure to put on our teachers, and for the most part, they astounded us by how well they were able to do that. They worked tirelessly to be able to contact students that they hadn't heard from, whether it was making sure their principal also helped with that, or they themselves are friends of the kids, but they worked tirelessly to get this plane built and flown so that instruction could happen. Now, having said that, here we are summer, many teachers are teaching summer school because we're trying to avoid something that I believe I started the phrase COVID slide back in March, because everybody knows that summer school causes a gap, right? If we let kids be home for 2.5 months during the summer and we don't really give them a lot to do except play, there's going to be academic, and there is academic loss. So imagine the loss that many of our students across the country are going to have with having had really not in-school instruction from the third week of March until the end of July. Those are gaps that we're now having to contend with and prepare for. That is what awaits our teachers. On top of that, we also have some school districts that will be offering blended learning. And so we have teachers who know that when they come back in August, that they will have to prepare a virtual distance learning curriculum while at the same time possibly teaching kids in classrooms.
Isn't that essentially, Dr. Good, isn't that essentially double the work? When you say blended learning, that means basically both, doing it online, doing it physically in the classroom from the traditional sense. Doing both and blending it, isn't that essentially double the work, or at least time and a half of that?
Well, it depends on the curriculum. For example, in our district, we're a project-based learning PBL district, and our teachers were supposed to put their projects online on a data learning platform. And if they did that right, then they would, and they did have seamless transition from the classroom to home learning. But not all districts were like that. And so, yes, for many teachers, it's been double work because they had to learn Google Classroom in a lot of instances, or other learning platforms. They weren't using them in the building, right? But now all of a sudden, that's the only way to get instruction across. And so they had to learn a platform. Most of them did Google Classrooms, and then learn how to be engaging within there, because just putting up worksheets, that's not good in the classroom, and it's not good online either, right? And so we were having to train teachers in how to be more engaging through a virtual world, and we still are, because we haven't been doing this very long, right? This has just been a 3-month experiment, which is going to continue in the fall, because frankly, many of our parents are saying they're not going to bring their kids back, and they expect a curriculum to be given to them online. So it depends on where you were as a district in your technology preparation and instructional technology.
Well, here in the city of Pittsburgh, from all accounts and everything that I've heard, that the deployment of laptops was not exactly smooth and efficient. You're running into in some of the lower income families, internet connectivity issues, which this is, of course, all dependent on. So there's a lot of variables and plates to be spun here to be able to try to deliver. As we're chatting with Dr. Rebecca Good, she's an education expert, former teacher, principal, superintendent. She's authored several articles for education journals. So she's a consultant to many educators here. You mentioned, and I didn't even think of it, the regression in learning that students are going to have to deal with just because of their entire dynamic and situation amidst the pandemic. For those that go back, those that stay at home, the teachers, again, caught in the middle of all of this. Some teachers I'm reading are just saying the heck with it. If they could take early retirement, they're going to do that. So you're losing very good, experienced teachers on that front. Some have just left the profession altogether, and they're just choosing another sector where they could get equal or greater compensation with their skill set. Are we seeing a true pandemic on that front, from losing good educators from the classroom to really pour gasoline on this already burning fire?
Unfortunately, yes. We are seeing that many teachers are telling us they're going to be retiring instead of helping us meet the challenge that is the new year. And we can only do what we can do with continue to hire. That before COVID, frankly, there was a survey put out in the 1950s, that asked parents to tell us how much they wanted their kids to go into teaching, and it was 70-80%. But a more recent survey of parents to say, do you want your child to go into education? Only 20% of parents said yes. So we had a problem before COVID with all the bad publicity. Think about it. The last couple of years, our teachers have heard so much about how poorly they're paid. They're really the pressure that's put on them, the paperwork. All of that was happening before COVID, and now this. So yes, you are exactly right. Our teachers, who are our heroes in this world of ours, need to be recognized, I think, better and better encouraged by not only the schools and not only people in education, but by the media, by everybody, so that we can encourage them to stay in the business and help us get through this.
Dr. Rebecca Good, an education expert, is with us to discuss the many problems surrounding the education of our youth amid this pandemic and the problems that have stemmed from this. Dr. Good, what do you see as a potential solution? I know it's somewhat of a loaded question, a $60,000 question. A lot of folks, will say, well, you just can't keep throwing more money after the issue, assuming that that's not a viable option, which I would imagine that in many cash-strapped areas and regions and districts, that's not going to be available. So what potential solutions are actually out there to remedy this?
Well, more and more you're hearing districts say that they're looking at the blended learning model, which they will survey parents to see which parents are coming back, which ones need more time. And for example, in my district, because I am an acting superintendent still, 40% of our parents have told us they're not ready to send their kids back. Matter of fact, 9% are ready to send them back. The rest are unsure, or 40% no. So we know that we have to offer a virtual experience while also preparing for the other kids to be in school with us. So it's just what it is. And so it's a matter of building back the trust of the parent. By having safety procedures in place, we need to really over-communicate to parents how we are implementing and going to continue to implement the safety procedures that will keep their child safe. How many times a day are we going to wipe doorways and doorknobs and light switches? Well, 3 or 4 or 5, if that's what it takes to win back the trust of the parents so that kids don't get sick. That's the main thing. If we can keep our kids from getting sick from the beginning of the school year and we don't have another wave, then we may get more of that 40% to say, you know what, by December, I'm gonna let my kid come back in January, so that there's that hope that we can do what we have to do well with a few less kids, and that might be the way to do it, and then get them all back hopefully by January.
Dr. Rebecca Good, education expert, is with us. Her website is askdr.good.com. She's the host of an educational podcast. She's authored many articles for educational journals. She's held essentially every role in education, from teacher, principal, all the way up to superintendent, and now an acting superintendent at a district. She joins us here on KDKA Radio. What, Dr. Good, is the question that we should be asking teachers? We're always told that we need to be listening, we need to be helping the helpers, we need to be doing our part. I would imagine if we know a teacher or for our children or grandchildren that are being educated right now, what can we ask that teacher? What's the question that they wish that they would be asked by people?
How can I help you? Right? How can I help you? How can I help support your instructional program? Maybe I need to start believing you when you tell me that Johnny isn't paying attention and Johnny's not doing X, right? Instead of saying, my Johnny would never do that. Become a better believer of your child's teacher. That's number one. Number two is, we need to become advocates for public education. And what I mean by that is we need to, as a society, make sure we're contacting our legislators, especially now, because we have legislative sessions coming up. And what's going to be the temptation? Because many of our governments did not get the tax money that they normally would have during the COVID period. So we've got some cities that are cash strapped, right? So what's going to be the temptation for our legislators when they return to session and start looking at how they're going to trim the budget? So I would encourage parents to start contacting their legislatures and saying, hey, thanks for, whatever happened in your state. I know in Texas, they did not do the state test, which was nice. They still paid schools for an attempt at learning. That's the way they put it. And so we were able to fund all of our workers. We didn't have to furlough anybody, and we were able to have meal programs and so forth. And so we can thank our legislators, we can thank our education agencies for that. But we also need to have them hear our voice and say, and please know, we don't expect you to cut from public education when it comes time to look at the budget. That is going to be an important part of what parents can do.
Dr. Rebecca Good, education expert, with us here on KDKA Radio. Dr. Good, thank you so much, and very insightful, very helpful answers to many important questions that are out there, and I'm sure we'll be calling upon you again here before too long to help try to solve the many ills that I guess are surrounding education in this current day.
Thank you.
Dr. Rebecca Good with us here on KDKA Radio.